you doing? Justin here, and today we're going to be adding the sixth note of the major scale to your blues vocabulary, which sounds really dull, but it's not. It's really hip, and it's a really cool little idea. You're going to have a lot of fun with it, right? So before we get going, I'm assuming that you've done my previous 2 blues courses, so you're familiar with the idea of the blues language and learning licks are like words and the scales are the alphabets and that kind of concept, and you're also familiar with all 5 patterns of the minor pentatonic scale. If you're not familiar with that, then you want to go and check out the second series where we look at playing all over the net, because we're going to start in pattern 1, but we're going to move away from that fairly quickly. And it's important to make sure you've got a solid foundation before you start trying out these more advanced ideas. It's not that advanced, right? But it's something that you want to come to at the right time in your guitar journey, I think. Well, probably not that much harm, even if you're a beginner and watching it and checking out what's going on. So the major sixth interval for me is a really, really classy sound, okay? It's associated mostly with guys like B.B. King, more modern blues guitar players like Robin Ford and Larry Carlton, those kind of guys. Probably nicked it from B.B., really. But it's a great little sound. You will have heard me using it a little bit there at the demo at the very top, but just to make it really super clear, I'm just going to target this 6th note, which we're in the key of A. I usually teach things in the key of A to start off with. Should be, for most of you, the most confident key for a blues. And I think when you're learning a new concept, it's a good idea to learn it in the key that you're most comfortable with. So the note F sharp is the 6th, and I'm going to be using this one here at the 7th fret on the 2nd string. I usually play with my 3rd finger. I'm just going to target that just over the A, so you're really clear about what the sound is that we're going for and what we're going to be looking at using today. So here it is. So hopefully you get the idea there. I was just really trying to target it out so you hear it, and it's a little bit more than you would normally use. It'd be like learning about a new spice and then adding too much of it to the dish. You wouldn't want to be doing that, right? So it's one of those things that you want to use some of, and when you're practicing it, you need to really explore that particular note as much as you can. But in the real world, you don't want to overuse it, or it starts to become a little bit... it loses some of the beauty when you overdo it. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about theory now. So I know it's a little bit dry, but I think it's important to understand. Now, over the A chord, the note is the 6th, because it's the 6th note of the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's the note F sharp. Now, over the A chord, it carries a little bit of a tension, and it wants to resolve back to, usually to the 5th or to the 7th. If I just get myself a little A chord here going, if I'm looking here, it feels a lot more confident and comfortable when it's resolved to the 5th. If I stay on it, it's pulling. Or it can resolve up to the flat 7. Okay, particularly over a dominant 7th chord, that's going to work, but it really nicely resolves back to the 5th of the A. Okay, so it's got a little bit of tension in it. It's a nice one. It's used often in the things like the gospel slides. That's a 6th chord going to a 9th chord. But it feels more stable again when it's resolved. You don't want to just sit on it all the time. So it's one of those notes where you can move through it, you can play it, but you don't want to just sit on it. If you just sit on it, it tends to sound a little bit odd, okay? Now, that same note, when we play it over a D7, hey, the 4 chord in a 12-bar blues, is wonderful. It's possibly the best note that you can play over the D7. It's the 3rd of the chord. The notes in a D7 chord are D, F sharp, A, and C. And it's this F sharp note. It's the note that makes a chord major or minor, the 3rd of the chord. So it's a very, very strong note. And over the D7 or a D9, it just sounds fantastic. So again, here's a D7 chord. it's resolved here. If I go up, it wants to resolve there. If I go down, it wants to resolve up. So you can hear the F sharp note over that D7 it's perfect. It's exactly what you want, you know, and often when you're playing a blues solo, you'll target this particular note just on the D. You can use it over the A as well, but particularly on the D, when the chord changes to that one, if you can target that note, it sounds really, really cool, okay? So over the D, really wicked. Over the E chord, I'll play an E7 again. The F sharp wants to resolve. Wants to resolve, but it can still work, and it's one of those ones you can sit on it, but it's not so great over the E. It doesn't sound bad, and it wouldn't hurt if you play it. It's not like a bad note. It's not an avoid note, but it's not adding anything particularly special. It's the ninth of E. Any of you that have been doing any of my funk chords or anything, it's this. There's the F sharp over the E, gives you an E9 chord if you add an F sharp note to an E7 chord. So it works and it sounds good, sounds really cool, funky. It probably wants to resolve, you can use it or not, but the main thing here theoretically that you want to get is that the F sharp note is the third of the D7 chord, or the D chord. So particularly on the 4 chord of the blues, you want to be thinking about playing that F sharp as being a particularly great note to stop on, to sit on, to use, to accent, whatever, you know. So even on there's a couple of places now we'll talk about where that D7 comes. So in a standard 12 bar blues, the D7 will come in bar 5. So it'll be like, you'd have A. You can use that 6th if you want now. You don't have to, but it would sound cool. But then here, right when you hit that D, it's like, yeah, man, that'll be wicked. And then especially cool if you move off it. Okay, on the E, you can use it or not. D again, yeah, hit that 6th, man. Back to the A, you can take it or leave it. And then on the E, it doesn't matter. You'd probably be playing a turnaround anyway. So the part of the deal with learning and exploring this note is trying to find when the best time to use it is and how to use it. Now, there are definitely licks that you can use, and as I've explained in previous lessons, when you learn a lick, it's like a word and it becomes part of a language. So we're going to be learning some licks that use this particular note. But I think before that, it's worth exploring that and just trying to get used to the sound of it, okay? Like it's worth practicing scales before you start trying to speak a language. Actually, it's not a great analogy. It doesn't quite hold, but believe me, it's worth just trying to play this, incorporate this 6th in with your regular blues playing before you start trying to learn any words, just to get familiar with it. A good way to think of it, if you remember back to the lessons when we learned about the blues scale, we didn't really learn it as a scale playing up and down because it doesn't really work very well in that kind of way. It's more of the blue note is a note that you can add into your minor pentatonic to make it sound cool and make it work. And it's the same with the 6th. You can use it that way, but you wouldn't normally practice the minor pentatonic and just adding that note in like in a scalular fashion. It's not the best way of learning that, I don't think. So I'm going to propose a kind of a practice order for you of the way that you should explore it that I think will be really cool, okay? So the first stage should be trying just that one note that we looked at then, which is the 7th fret of the 2nd string, and incorporating that into your minor pentatonic scale, okay? So just put on a 12-bar blues backing track in the key of A and target that note, okay? Use just the minor pentatonic scale or the blues scale. So minor pentatonic, you can add the blue note in if you want. Doesn't really matter either way, but just target that one note, okay? Just see what you can get out of it. How, you know, slide to it. You can bend from it, okay? So you can go from the 7th fret, a semitone bend up to the 8th fret, which is the minor pentatonic. Really, really classy little trick. You could bend from the 5th fret up to the F sharp, but that's a little awkward. It involves kind of moving position or changing the pattern that you're in. So I don't maybe recommend that straight away, but just start by having a bit of a feel for it. And I'd suggest that's the kind of thing that you could do at least 4 or 5 practice sessions on. Just playing the minor pentatonic scale in pattern 1 and just targeting that one note. Not even all over the fingerboard, just that one note. See what you can get out of it. Don't just be satisfied with the things that you find in the first go through and go, oh yeah, I've done that, I can do it. Of course you can play that note. It's not that difficult. You're looking for something a bit deeper than that. You're trying to get the sound of it in your ears, and you're trying to figure out how it fits in with your musical vocabulary and the licks that you know, and it's bigger. Okay, so that would be stage one. Stage two would be to explore that same note in a different part of the neck, and in this, like the same pattern, that F sharp note is found at the 4th fret on the 4th string. Now it's already out of position, so if we're playing, now I'd recommend that you use your first finger for both the note at the 5th fret and the 4th fret, not to slip into playing like scalular pattern using first finger, second finger, 4th finger. You can. There's nothing really wrong with it, but to start off with, I'd recommend just using your first finger to slide back to that one. That would be a really, really good idea. Again, start by just trying to target that one for a little bit, see how it feels. It's going to be harder. It's not, I don't find I tend to use that one a whole lot. Okay, I'd slide back to it when it gets to the D chord for sure, because again, especially if you're targeting it right on the change when the chord changes from the A to the D, and you can go and land on that note just as the D changes. It sounds wicked. I think possibly because it's kind of low down as well, it gets a little muddy, particularly over the A chord. But again, it's worth doing, you know, if you've got a looper pedal, looping a bit of just the A7 or the A7 and the D7 and practicing how it feels to get onto that note, you know. It's just, if you target it and think of it as just, it's practice. Don't feel like, oh, I should be playing an awesome solo, because now's not the time for that. This is practice time where you're exploring an idea, okay? So let's give that a little go. Get the idea. It feels a little less easy, particularly on the A. Over the D chord, it's fantastic, you know, and it'll feel a lot more comfortable in that part of your 12-bar blues sequence. But part of the challenge, and again, it's listening to what it sounds like over the different chords. The best way to do it is a backing track, because it's kind of real, you know. And yeah, can't recommend highly enough the idea of practicing these things with a backing track. A good 5-minute session just on one idea is a really good way of kind of keeping yourself focused on a particular thing. Try not to let yourself just drift off into having a solo and playing all of your, you know, your licks and just going off on one, because it's great fun, and you should be doing that as part of your practice. But when you're working on a particular thing, try and stay focused on that thing that you're practicing at that moment. Once you feel you've done enough exploring in pattern 1, now you can branch out and start exploring the other different patterns that you're already confident with. Hopefully you're confident with all 5 by now. So have a look at pattern 2. If you know the notes on your fingerboard, it's relatively easy, because you're just thinking pattern 2 and I'm going to add in an F sharp note. So if you hear, there's an F sharp. Okay, that one particularly for me is a really, really nice one in the minor pentatonic. This, adding that one and that one in, sometimes makes you feel like you're in B minor pentatonic instead of A minor pentatonic, so watch out for that. Actually, it can kind of work doing that, but that's another lesson to be told another time. But look, if we're just adding those 2 notes now into our A minor pentatonic. It can be a funky idea, this. Just, again, I'm using licks that I know already, but just trying to find little melody ideas within each different pattern, okay? If you're on the website, you're going to find the diagrams for all 5 patterns of the minor pentatonic scale with the 6 shown in there, because that's really the best way to do it. when I learned this idea, I spent at least a couple of weeks on each different pattern, okay? So it wasn't a short-term thing. Again, it's much better to have a few ideas that you can use and use them real well and be able to let them come out kind of naturally in your playing than spend a bit of time learning each one of those notes in the 5 boxes and then never actually being able to use it to make music. That shouldn't be the goal here, right? The goal is to give you new musical food to explore. And even if you just practice that one pattern or pattern 2 or whatever pattern you're enjoying, then I think that should be the goal. Pattern 3 of the minor pentatonic scale, an interesting place that might not be immediately apparent is bending the top note of pattern 3, which would be the note E, up to the F sharp. It's a really, really nice one. We've also got it here on the 11th fret of the 3rd string, and you can kind of see that makes it like a nice D major triad on the top 3 strings. So it's a nice way of thinking of it. It's just like, again, when it hits the D chord in your 12-bar blues, that's where you want to be really targeting that note there. We've also got the F sharp down here again. I don't tend to use those lower ones as much. They should work and you can for sure use them, but they always tend to feel a little awkward. But particularly that in pattern 3, the bend on the top note I think works real good. So it's about exploring, again, I'm trying to give you a little demo of each one so you can see some ideas of how I might be approaching using it. And that's, I would spend and do spend sometimes still a good 5-minute practice block just on a particular pattern, on a particular note to see what I can get out of it and ways I might approach it. I think it's really, I really enjoyed it. It's a fun thing. It's improvising. It's having, it's making music, but it's also trying out new stuff and exploring ideas. So pattern 4, it falls under the 3rd finger. Okay. In pattern 4, you can either stretch back to it there at the 11th fret, the same one that we were using before, but it'll come now with the 1st finger. You could bend to it there from the 14th fret, I suppose, with the 3rd finger, or slide up. I don't tend to use those ones. In this pattern, that one on the thinner string, again, I'm using that one quite a bit personally. Again, this is just my take on it. You definitely want to be transcribing, the masters and learning what they do and their vocabulary. And we will be doing some licks in a couple of lessons time after we've looked at the 9th as well. But anyway, let's just do a quick pattern 4 demo too. Again, I was tending to use a bit of this just because I love the sound of that, the minor 3rd of the minor pentatonic. With that note together, it creates a lot of tension. It can be quite a nice one to do repeatedly over and over. Might have gone slightly out with my lute there. It was a bit quiet. I was struggling to hear it, but hopefully you'll forgive me. It's just such a great sound, the 6th. Hopefully you're hearing some of the vibe, particularly when we add the 9th to this stuff as well. We have the 9th and the 6th. Then things get real choice. Okay, so moving back to pattern 5 now. This one on the thinner string, I don't think I've much used it. I'm sure, it works. It's the right note, but I just don't get to that one very often. We've got the 5th fret bend a tone, which will definitely work. And the F sharp here, which is, it's the same when we were using box 2, that one. definitely works lovely over the A and the D. Of course, I'm just doing it over the A so you can really clearly hear the effect of the sixth. Over the D chord, because it's a chord tone, it doesn't have as much dissonance. It's a bit easier to use, in fact, so you'll find it easier. Yeah, but doing it, practicing it over a whole 12-bar blues backing track is what I'd recommend. I'm just using a looper now just for convenience during the lesson, but when I'm practicing, I tend to use backing tracks more. I hope that most of you have checked out my Jam Blues series. I've got 4 albums of Jam Blues now that are all live recordings with me and my mates that make real backing tracks of us jamming that you get to jam with as well. Loads of different keys and all that, different styles. So you might want to go and check that out as well. Jam Blues. Here we go. This is pattern 5. Here we go. Let's have a little play on that. Okay, a couple of times I was hitting the ninth there as well, but hopefully you heard mostly the sixth. And I think it's just such a wonderful interval to add into your blues. I could have written a whole series, I think, just on the sixth because it's so cool. But we're going to continue. I want you to spend enough time, though, on the major sixth before you continue in this course and start looking at the ninth and the Dorian mode and the major pentatonic. There's a whole lot of things that we're going to look at. But it's, again, I just want to say again to... I don't want to drill on too much about this stuff, but it's much better to have a couple of ideas that you can actually take away from this lesson and use and try out and practice than just brushing over the whole thing and adding a little bit in that you're unlikely to ever actually come out with naturally. It's about repetition. It's about doing it over and over and working it into the playing that you've got already, okay? Just watching the video and playing it once or twice won't make a whole lot of difference, okay? But it's a wonderful tool, this kind of idea of adding in a new color tone, because you could spend months and months exploring this one little idea, you know, that's, well, I would hope some of you will be doing that anyway, but give it at least a couple of weeks, right? Really try and get under the skin of maybe not all 5 patterns, because that is quite a lot of work, but at least a couple of your favorite patterns. So maybe box 1 and box 2 or 3, depending on what it is that you most like playing in. For me, it's box 1 and 3 are the ones where I spend most of my time, but everybody's different and has different vocabulary that they enjoy using. Hopefully you're refining yours. So look, I really hope you're enjoying this. Again, the whole series is going to be over on the website. You're going to find diagrams and backing tracks and stuff that'll help you out with your practice on this, as well as practice routines. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel though if you dig what I do. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you for plenty more lessons very soon. You take care of yourselves. Bye bye.